Welcome in to the Warchant.com Top 40. We break into the top 10 now. We took you 20 through 11 there on video last time. Here we go, breaking into the top 10. Should be exciting. And actually, I think there's real hope for all of these guys to have a major impact. Better, they're in the top 10, no doubt. Corey and Ira join me again. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We start right off the bat with Amari Gainer. I think this is an interesting one. He comes in at number 10. Nobody's surprised he's in the top 10. When you look at Florida State's team in its entirety, there are only about 4 or 5 guys that look like guys that would have played in yesteryear on dominant teams. He's one of them. Now, he hasn't played that way at all, but there's a lot of time left for him. But this has to be a breakout year. He has to be sure of what he's doing. They have to utilize him. He's got to get better when he's in coverage, that's for sure. Can he be a star that this team needs at a position where they just have not enough impact players right now?
Well, it's now or never, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he's got another year, so it's not necessarily never.
Sure, but if he's not he's just kind of an okay player this year, then we can go ahead and say this is what Amari Gainer is. If he doesn't take that next step, right?
Yeah, and it's weird. He's a hard guy to define because I think if you look on paper, he's the most productive player they have on defense. I mean, in limited snaps last year, I think he led the team in tackles. I mean, he had some games where he had a lot of tackles. Was really productive. The downside, I guess, was he didn't. First of all, he wasn't on the field as much as you would like because they couldn't figure out how to use him in their defense. That's on Adam Fuller. Amari Gainer's definitely one of your most 10 or 11 most talented athletic players. He needs to be on the field. Seems like in the spring they got to where they feel like they've done that. But then he also, to Jeff's point, he has to improve in some areas as well. He's going to be able to cover. He's going to be able to be maybe a little bit more physical in the running game. There's no questioning his athletic ability, man. That guy can run for days from sideline to sideline. And I mean, this is going to be a big opportunity for him. I have him in number 6 on my list. I think he's got a chance to be a really dynamic player, but he definitely has to improve from what we've seen. He has added, I think, like 20 pounds since last season, so he should be more physical.
Corey, your thoughts on Amari Gainer other than it better be now or never?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. He definitely looks the part, and he's really, he's got the athleticism to be a very good college football defensive player. I guess I should use the same gauge with him that I used with all the other guys we talked about in the last show, that it's hard to judge anyone on what happened last year. It just is. But when you see that body type and the speed and the physicality, I mean, he likes to hit. You just hope you start seeing plays being made. Like, I mean, tackles are nice. I'm talking about game-changing type plays, and he just didn't seem to make the kind of Amari Gainer impact I was kind of hoping he'd make in 2020. Either coming off the edge, stripping ball carriers, defending passes. Like, he didn't do the things that I was hoping he would be able to showcase a little bit. But again, it's hard to judge anybody on what we saw last year with that thing.
It's good to always put that caveat out there because I think we could be disappointed with just about every defensive player we saw last year because the defense on the whole was an absolute sieve. It was impossible to watch down to down and expect really big-time plays or game-changing plays to occur because I don't think a lot of guys knew what the hell they were doing. The defense didn't look very coordinated. You cannot play fast and play to all that athleticism if you're unsure of where you're going and why. And I felt like most of the year you saw a lot of guys kind of wondering, am I doing the right thing? And not just playing downhill, fast football, physical football. Let's see if he takes a huge leap once he knows what he's doing.
On top of that, you're right. I mean, I agree with you 100%. You also have to trust that your teammates are going to do what they're supposed to be doing. And there was none of that either. So,
Keir Thomas is a big-time player, they think. Hopefully he will be. He's a guy that has to be. Again, we continue to stay with defense here. He's a guy that, you're not as excited about as, say, Jermaine Johnson, but he's the other part of this. And so let's see if Keir Thomas can make an impact on this defensive front as well. He comes in next at number 9. Corey, I start with you.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that, if he's the guy we think he could be, might end up being a top 5 guy by the time the season's over. He could be that big an impact on this team. He's the one guy on this team, even more so than Jermaine Johnson, really. He's had more success at the college level than anybody else on this defense. And it's really not close. So if he could, the problem is we didn't get to see him at all in the spring. So not that really should matter, but it does. And you just wonder, you hope the health is there. But if he's healthy, he's proven he can play at this level and play well at this level. And he's been an all-SEC type player for a couple of different seasons on a pretty good defense. A couple of those South Carolina defenses were good, and he was the anchor of them. So that's what excites you, is a guy that can hold his own on the defense, whether it's on the edge or in the interior, and he could be a great bookend or a great guy to work around with Jermaine Johnson. You have really, in my opinion, because of the production you got last year from those dudes you thought were good, you have really upgraded your production on the defensive line with Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, I really think we probably undervalue him a little bit because of the reason Corey mentioned. We didn't get to see him in the spring. He was rehabbing the entire spring. And he's not a guy that – he doesn't look like Jermaine Johnson physically. He's not a sleek athlete. He's more of a kind of a beefier defensive end. And he's going to be a guy that I think is going to be hugely important. I don't think he had a great season last year. South Carolina was terrible on defense last year. But I think it was a combination of COVID, coaching staff probably on the way out, a lot of things going on in that team. But if you look back in his career, there's a lot of green. That Aslan brought up those numbers. The year before that, he was a really productive player and a guy who, from everything we've heard, is another guy that's got just an A+ in terms of work ethic, personality, wants to be a team leader. So I think he's going to be a big addition. I think he gets a little bit overlooked because we didn't get to see him in the spring.
We get to offensive line now with our next selection, number 8, Maurice Smith. Let's get to the group that has to improve the most, really continue to improve. I guess you could highlight a lot of areas that have to improve the most. I shouldn't say that, but the offensive line has been really the bane of Florida State's existence for several years now. Here's a guy that we're excited to see play, a guy that if he's able to have a great offseason and gain muscle and gain strength, can really be a very good player for this team. Ira, this time I start with you.
Finally, the viewers at home are so happy.
If they're still there, if they're still watching.
Maurice, he's a really good player. The only knock on him at all is what you just said. He's not the biggest guy physically. And so, a guy like that sometimes on the offensive line, especially in the interior, is going to wear down as the season goes on. So the longer he's in college, the stronger he's going to get, the more a year under Josh Storms is going to do wonders for him. But you see the difference when he's out of the game. He's another guy I probably should have had higher just because of his importance. When he's not in the game, the snaps are not consistent. I mean, he's one of those centers that you don't have to worry about the snaps so much. When he does have a bad snap, it's like, wow, how did that just happen? Because generally he's very solid in that area, and he's a smart kid and a nice player. So if he holds up, it's a big piece of that interior offensive line.
Ira, I think you had him at 11 or thereabouts. Don't be so hard on yourself, buddy. It's not like you had him at 27. You had him in the ballpark.
But when I realized where we had him, I was thinking maybe I should have had him a little higher. I think I did have him a little higher and then just kind of bumped him down because of the quality of this top 10.
Ooh, okay.
We should point that out, though. The 20 to 40, we took a lot of shots at them in our writing and in the grading and in maybe in the first installment. But I do think this top 10, I mean, those are solid football players. There's a couple of question marks, but for the most part, I think those guys are really solid football players.
Well, let's get to our last two for this particular video. Lawrence Toafili, and we brought up Jashaun Corbin the last time we were talking. Obviously, he's a very consistent back, but he's not a home run hitter. He's not a guy that's going to take it to the house. We think that Lawrence Toafili is that guy. That's why he's so high on this list at number 7. Of course, he's a stud. He's from St. Petersburg. You knew he'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, Lawrence Toafili is dynamic and offensive player, the most dynamic offensive player they have on this football team. Averaged over 9 yards a carry last season. The only problem was he could only play about 3 or 4 games because he couldn't stay healthy. He's put on some weight. He's obviously not going to be – he's not built like Jashaun Corbin, but he's put on some weight. You don't want him to get too heavy to keep him explosive. But, he should be a little bit more durable and know more of the offense. But you got to think Florida State's coaches are dying to get him on the field, 40, 50 snaps a game because he's a guy that can – as Jimbo used to say back in the day, he could change a scoreboard from anywhere on the field. And he's a big-time player, man. There's no doubt. If he's on the field a lot, that's going to be good things for Florida State.
Well, they haven't had a single player who could do that, not one that was committed and consistent and, bought in or anything like that. So he's that guy, Corey.
Yeah, I would say, other than Jordan Travis, who plays a completely different position, right. Toafili's the one guy that was had the look of an actual playmaker and not a guy that can score 4 touchdowns in a season. I'm talking about a guy that could maybe, if he has a good game, can score 3 or 4 in a game. He just seems to have a little special sauce to him, which they're not loaded with those guys, I'm going to say, on the offensive side of the ball at the skill positions. So this is a guy that I think could have a really, really big jump. It could be even an all-ACC guy. Maybe not this year, but he might split the carries too much. But if he stays healthy, is an all ACC caliber talent.
Let's finish off the list here. Jamie Robinson, we don't have a ton of time to talk because we've gone long here with the others, but we certainly don't want to overlook them. Ira, I start with you.
I like Jamie Robinson a lot. He was a guy I didn't know what to expect. He had a lot of tackles at South Carolina, but again, that defense had really fallen off. And you just sometimes when a safety has tackles, you wonder if it's just arm tackles, 30 yards down the field. But he's a guy that when they put him in that nickelback position, and he looks like another linebacker, and real physical guy, loves playing football. He could not have been more impressive in the spring. I thought he was maybe the most impressive guy other than Jermaine Johnson on that defense all spring. And I expect big things out of him.
Well, and look at those numbers. Like, they don't overwhelm you. There's some bad numbers in there. Now, that's a bad defense he was playing with. But look at the total snaps that he got. He played 680 snaps. And you just can't replicate that kind of experience. And he's not a bad football player. So instead of 680 snaps of a bad football player, even if this guy's not an All-American, it's 680 snaps of competence, which is something they've been missing.
Where he really excels is that tackle area, which we talked about, the physicality. He's a very good tackler, and I think playing him closer to the line of scrimmage is going to do him well. I didn't see a lot of South Carolina football last year, but he was playing safety. My guess is maybe they had him a little bit further away from the ball. I don't know that he's going to be a guy that's great in coverage, but he's certainly a guy that can play well in the box.
He was in the blue. He was in the blue in tackling as a freshman in 2019.
Yeah, and he played back-to-back years where he had a lot of playing time, a ton of tackles. So obviously he's been productive. Plus, I think when you tackle well, you're always playing with a little bit of anger. And I'd be angry if I was from Cordele. Have you guys been to Cordele?
Hey,
come on.
Let's not take shots at Cordele.
Oh, listen, Cordele can go to hell. But he's going to be an impactful player. It's obviously important that Florida State has a physicality to it this year on defense, and we'd circle him as part of that. They didn't have much of it a year ago. When we come back for the final installment here, we get to that top 5. Don't forget to hit the like button. We'll do it again here real soon for the top 5 on the Warchant.com Top 40.